moving back home is not about failure. It is about strategy. Should I say goodbye? Or, like my husband prefers to say it, goodbye for now. Whatever it is, goodbye is always a difficult thing to say. It just kind of makes you sad because no matter what, you also have some memories that you would miss. There are so many different reasons why Africans travel to the diaspora. Some travel for economic reasons, or like they will say, to seek greener pastures. Some travel for educational purposes. Some travel because of political instability. Some also travel because they are fleeing war or some kind of ethnic or religious persecution. Some also travel to get a passport that makes it easier for them to travel the world. So if you're an African, this will make sense to you. You know how difficult it is when you're applying for a visa just because you're applying with an African passport. So many people who want to travel the world, their aim is to get a passport, which makes this a bit more simpler. And that is why they travel to some places like Canada, the USA, or the UK to get citizenship so that they would acquire a passport from these countries I have mentioned. And henceforth, their traveling dream be less sophisticated than the stress you have to go through when you're traveling the world with an African passport for whatever reason. So these are the reasons that many of us as Africans travel. What happens when things do not really go as planned? How do we see the thought of going back home? Some people see this as a failure. So when you tell people you are coming back home, many of them will try to convince you to stay because they see coming back home as a failure. I have come across at least two African YouTubers who are saying goodbye to Canada for two various reasons. One of them, whose home country is Kenya, is going back home because after school she went through 3 years postgraduate work permit but was not able to attain permanent residency. So her postgraduate work permit has expired and she applied for a visitor's visa, which was very good on her part to do. She has a visitor's visa, but you and I know that you cannot work with a visitor's visa. So she was, in as much as she could live here for the next 6 months, she cannot work. It made no sense for her to live here while she does not have the right to work. So she said goodbye, and I am glad that she said goodbye, but she said this is not like a final goodbye or something. Because she has a visitor's visa, what it means is that she can always come back and visit. If it's still the permanent residence that she wants, when she has some education here, she has some work experience here, she can still explore the various express entry pathways, even from home in Kenya. It will surprise you to know that she could not even, although she had met the monetization criteria on her YouTube channel, she could not even monetize her YouTube channel when she stays in Canada because she has no work permit in Canada. So it makes sense for her to go home and at least focus on her business. The other one, who is a mother of two, whose home country is Nigeria, is going back home, and people do not understand. For some reasons, people do not really understand why she should go back home. But this person has already attained citizenship in Canada, recently became a mother of two. She had a child before, recently had a second child. And sometimes, all the reasons why we travel are very valid. But sometimes after getting almost all that, you realize that you are also missing out on some very important things back home that we had and not even appreciate. But the level of stress in these Western countries is real. The fact that you might not have family here, the fact that you might not have a system of support here makes all these very unbearable. Sometimes going back home may be very strategic if you have all your things in line. And another thing that we need to look at is that once you have had an opportunity to stay out, once you have had an opportunity to stay in the Western or have some education or have some work experience in the Western world, when you go back home, you are able to leverage on these skills and experiences you gain abroad, because many African countries are growing very rapidly and they need people with global experience to take leadership roles. Secondly, Africa still has a lot of growing opportunities, untapped opportunities, green areas yet to be explored. The beauty of living outside for a while is that your eyes are open to these opportunities back home in Africa when you get the exposure outside. The third thing why going back home may be a good idea is because of the cost of living and the quality of life. Guys, let's be real. The cost of living in Africa is way less than the cost of living in the diaspora. So, like in the instance of the lady from Kenya who was here and not working, it is very ideal, it is very profitable, it makes economic sense for her to go back home, because once she's not working, she goes back home. I'm not sure she's even going to pay rent, because perhaps her parents have a place she can live. Whilst she would have to be paying rent while she lives here, meanwhile she cannot work. So in her case, going back home appeared to be the best option for her at this material moment in time. You know, the truth is, it's not everybody who has the strength to go back because of what people home will say. One thing we have to know is that people who have the strength, who are able to say I'm going back, are people who have some kind of support at home. If you do not have this kind of support at home, it will be difficult to say you are going back. I've seen a couple of videos of homeless Africans in Canada, and they choose to stay because the conditions back home is not any better. Some of them have even started, abusing drugs and substances. It's rather unfortunate that they have to be in such a situation. But I really think that no matter what, if it has to get to this level, then going back home is always a better choice, no matter what anybody thinks. You have a family back home. You are lucky you have somewhere you call home that you can go back to when things are not working out. You should not become homeless in Canada whilst you have a home in your home country, especially when you know that you cannot even work. You get it? So it's not like your homelessness is a temporal situation that you are working on. It's a situation that you do not know what is going to come out of it. And we know that these things can easily lead to drug addictions and all other things, depression and all these other things that can affect your mental state. You shouldn't even get to that level. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Why did you travel to the Western world? Are you looking at going back at some point in time? What if you have to go back sooner than expected because the plans just did not work out? Do you have what it takes to say, I am going back home, no matter what no matter what anybody thinks or no matter what society thinks? I have a lovely family who are always ready and willing to receive me. Even if I have to be in the case of like the prodigal son, I have a family who are always willing and ready to receive me. Or is it going to be a do or die affair for you? Kindly leave your thoughts in the comment section and let's see what you all think about this situation. Another thing we cannot overemphasize is reconnecting with culture and family when you go back home. Guys, one thing we miss here as Africans is our rich cultural heritage, the sense of community we have back home. the bonds we share with our families when we are back home is one thing we really miss here, and it is one thing that makes it a bit of a challenge for us to integrate very well here, because you are kind of more or less on your own, especially those who are even single. It is very difficult. Like, you have a problem and you realize that if my father was here, if my mother were here, if my siblings were here, they would understand me. There will be a shoulder to cry on. They would comfort me. They will encourage me. That kind of bond we share amongst families, the way we do it in Africa. Unfortunately, we do not have that here. That is one thing that makes it very easy for people to be depressed here. You get it? So the fact that going back home gives you that should be a plus. You can make more valuable impact back home. We are in places where our expertise are not recognized because there are so many people like us, right? Especially for those who came to pursue education and all that. There are so many of you, and you are not seen as extraordinary. You even need to work double as much for you to be recognized. Meanwhile, when there is so much potential for you back home, where you can make a real impact, where you'll be loved, where you'll be appreciated back home. If you find yourself in a situation that makes going back home an option, you should not be discouraged. You will have a sense of fulfillment knowing that you are making so much impact, and the fact that it is being felt, you are being recognized. Last but not the least, which I think is the best, is creating a global identity. An identity which is not tied to any specific country. So saying goodbye to, let's say, Canada does not mean you are cutting ties with Canada, but how amazing would it be that you have been able to have this identity, have the global identity, or have an identity, or like I said initially, you have been able to go through the process to secure citizenship here, and you are a dual citizen of, let's say, Ghana and Canada, or Nigeria and Canada, which means you can go home anytime and you can come back here anytime. In fact, you have two homes and you are more of a global person. You get the benefit the passport offers for you. That makes it easy for you to travel anywhere you want to travel to. You are able to get the best of both countries, the best of the West and the best from Africa. Sometimes you wish there is a world where you can take the best of everywhere and put it together and be there. But we all know that whenever you are making a move, you gain something, you lose something. So it depends on what your priorities are at any material time. That is what makes you make a certain move. And then it gets to a point you realize that you have gained what you didn't have, but you are now also missing out on what you have. And you want to go back because, yes, you've gotten this one and you have realized that what I'm also missing out is very valuable to me, so I want to have that. Unfortunately, it is difficult to have the best of the two at the same time in the same place. Yes, that is why gaining a global identity comes with so much advantage, where you are able to move around freely without having to go through the stress of visa applications that many of us as Africans go through when we want to travel to the West. We should, however, have in mind that returning to Africa isn't always that smooth. We have to face issues like inadequate infrastructure or a different work culture. If your move to Africa is for good, if you are moving for good, if you are really moving for good permanently, then take note of this. It is very crucial to have a solid plan, including financial resources, a network, and clear goals. In the case of the Nigerian YouTuber who was going back home, it is amazing how all the things that we have back home that we think does not really matter at a point in time becomes all that matters. Good for her, she has her citizenship. her children were born here, so I believe they all have Canadian citizenship, and she can always come back whenever she wants to. She is still sharing her life. She's living a stress-free life, how she's resting, how she can afford the number of helps she wants to, and all that, which you know that if you are living in this Western world, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to have babies in this Western world. The kind of support we have when we have children back home cannot be compared in any way to what happens in this Western world. And if you are not careful, it's going to put you in a state of stress and depression. So moving back home is not about failure. It is about strategy. Sometimes the move you didn't expect can be the one that changes everything. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and see you in my next video. Goodbye. Or let me say, bye for now.